Welcome to the LIMS appliance assembly video. We will walk through the full assembly of the LIMS Edge appliance for the AM Now program. We will start with mechanical and electrical assembly, wiring, network wiring, the enclosure assembly, and finally power wiring. We start with the blank plate. We'll mark 5 guidelines on the plate offsetting from the top. The plate has horizontal and vertical perforations. Please use those horizontal lines to maintain your straightness. These are centering guides for us to be able to place DIN rail and our wire trays. Install with 2 screws the DIN rail and wire tray onto the places as shown in the picture. Again, align each one of the pieces to the outside edge of the plate. The bottom left corner is the power center for the appliance. I start with the far left corner, which is the end block for the assembly, and then move from left to right installing that. Both the circuit breaker and the 24-volt power supply have connector releases at the bottom for the DIN rail. You can use a small screwdriver to pry those open. Install the T380 module in the center DIN rail location. Again, it has a red clip at the bottom to allow you to connect it onto the DIN rail. Install the computer in the upper left corner. Again, it has a black clip at the bottom that you can release to place it on the DIN rail easily. Install the terminal labels at the location seen here with the line, neutral, and ground, and the plus and minus on the right hand side. Install terminal jumpers across the terminal blocks for both the line side on the left and then the plus and minus area terminal jumpers on the right, which are a pair of 4. This shows the LIMS wiring kit, numbered 1 through 8. We'll work through placing each wiring on the system. Start with wire 1. Wire 1 is a single SO cable that's been stripped back so that we can keep them together. And we place that in the ground, neutral, and line areas on the terminal blocks, powering the 24-volt power supply with the line, neutral, and ground as seen on the right side. Wire number 2 goes from the line area in the terminal blocks to the circuit breaker bottom side. Wire 3 goes from the plus side of the 24-volt power supply and to the plus side of the orange terminal block. Wire 4 goes from the minus side of the 24-volt power supply into the minus side of the orange terminal block. Wire 5 goes from the plus side of the orange terminal block, the upper section, to the very first input on the computer, which is plus, 24-volt plus. Wire 6 goes from the minus side of the lower level of the orange terminal blocks to the second input on the computer, which is the 24-volt minus. Wire 7 goes from the upper section of the plus side of the orange terminal blocks to the plus connector on the T380, which is the second from the right on the lower level. Feed the cable into the wire tray. Wire 8 goes from the lower level minus side of the orange terminal blocks over to the rightmost lower input into the T380, which is the minus 24 input. Feed the wire through the wire tray and then place the cap on the wire tray. We're now going on to network wiring. Wire 9 will go from the left side of the computer input of the RJ45 input and feed it into the wire tray and expose 4 inches of the cable outside the wire tray for connection into the enclosure. Cable 10 will go from the right side of the RJ45 connectors and fed into the wire tray and then into the T380 RJ45 connector at the bottom. We're now moving on to the enclosure assembly. Mark hole centers for 3 holes, 2 on the latch side, 1.5 inches in on each side and 3 inches from the bottom, and on the hinge side, 6 inches from the right side in and 3 inches from the bottom. We're going to place 2 cable glands and 1 network header. On the latch side, a cable gland on the left side, which is a 7/8 inch hole, and a 1 inch hole for the network header. On the hinge side, we have a single cable gland, which will require the 7/8 inch hole as well. We now place this assembly into the enclosure, lining up the 4 holes on the corners of the board. Secure the assembly plate into the enclosure by using 4 screws. If you're having trouble locating the screws, they may be taped underneath the plate. Place 2 cable glands, one on the latch side, one on the hinge side, in the 7/8 inch holes that we had drilled. Place the network header in the upper right corner in the 1 inch hole, with the largest part of the network header facing out, and connect cable 9 that's extending from the wire tray on the inside into the network header. Feed about 5 inches of the power wire into the cable gland on the hinge side near the power area. Secure ground, neutral, and line into the circuit breaker and 2 terminal blocks. And finally, apply the LIMS license to the bottom wire tray within the assembly, centering it. Congratulations, you've finished your LIMS assembly, and that concludes it. Thank you very much.